Don't worry, nobody will remember your contributions anyway. Those words just hung there in Logan's polished office while I stared at the severance agreement I'd signed moments earlier. 5 years of 70-hour weeks reduced to one digital signature and a careless remark. My face stayed calm, but my chest tightened hard. I appreciate the opportunity, I said as I stood up. Professional to the very end, that was me, Dana Whitaker. Senior systems engineer, or I guess, former senior systems engineer as of 3 minutes ago. Logan Merritt, our charming CEO, didn't even lift his eyes from his laptop. The San Diego sun lit up his perfectly styled hair through the floor-to-ceiling windows we'd installed after our Series A. $10 million to scale a company I helped build from scratch. I walked out into the open office area, past rows of engineers who had no clue I wouldn't be back tomorrow. Some of them were literally writing code on top of mine. Lines I'd created during endless all-nighters, code that held the entire product together. The custom system architecture I built back when we worked out of that old warehouse downtown, sweating through 90-degree days because we couldn't afford proper air conditioning, I kept coding anyway, even while sweat ran down my back. "Heading out early?" Thomas called from his desk. He was one of the newer hires and had no idea what was going on. "Something like that," I said with a smile I didn't feel. I packed my things quickly. Not that there was much to pack. A small plant, a framed photo of my sister's family, and a coffee mug. 5 years, and everything I owned here fit into one canvas tote. Everything else, I'd given to this company. Waiting for the elevator, I felt a cold ripple move through me. Logan's comment about no one remembering my contributions wasn't just cruel, it was completely wrong. Every piece of that architecture had my fingerprints all over it. The documentation followed my exact style, with shorthand and notes that only I understood. I'd never created that big comprehensive guide I kept meaning to do. 3 years on my to-do list, but always pushed aside for emergencies. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside. As they closed, I got one last look at the space that had felt like a second home. And a thought hit me. They really had no idea what they'd just done. I wasn't angry, not yet, but I suddenly felt very aware of my worth, and of exactly where every original architecture draft, version history, and IP-related email with my name on it was stored. I grew up watching my father's downfall. He was a brilliant engineer who built a groundbreaking battery system in the 90s. After his company went public, they forced him out and erased his name from every press release. I promised myself I would never let anyone do that to me. And yet here I was at 29, walking away from Quantum Shift with nothing but a severance check and an NDA I had reviewed very carefully before signing. The NDA covered company secrets, but it didn't cover my personal documentation process. And it definitely didn't cover the files I'd already sent to my personal attorney before meeting with Logan. I had seen this coming 3 weeks ago. The whispers, the closed-door meetings, the way Logan had suddenly started presenting Troy, the new engineering consultant, to our investors. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being ready. On the drive home, I called my attorney, Valerie Nolas. "I've been dismissed," I said plainly. "They're bringing in someone with more experience." "I see," Valerie answered, steady as always. "And the severance package?" 6 months' salary, standard NDA, nothing extra about intellectual property beyond what's in my employment contract. "Smart girl," Valerie said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "The files you sent over look solid. Let's meet tomorrow and talk through your options." The next day, I didn't feel that usual pull to check my work email or open Slack. Instead, I slept until 9 a.m. for the first time in years, made myself a real breakfast, and drove to Valerie's office with a strange, unexpected sense of ease. Valerie had all my files spread out across her conference table. Architecture diagrams, version history logs, emails showing my contributions, and most importantly, clear proof that I had built the custom authentication system that made Quantum Shift's products stand out in the marketplace. "You've been incredibly thorough," Valerie said. "Most people don't document like this." "My father taught me to keep receipts," I replied. "So what do you want to do with all of this?" she asked, motioning to the record of my 5 years of work. I sat down, thinking it over. I wasn't someone who acted out of spite. I wasn't raised to chase revenge, but I was raised to know my value. "Nothing yet," I decided, "but I want to be ready." Valerie nodded, fully understanding. "They'll come looking for you. Companies like this always do once they realize what they've lost. And when they do, we'll be prepared." I left her office feeling surprisingly peaceful. For the first time in 5 years, my time belonged to me, and I planned to use it well. 3 weeks after my dismissal, I was sitting in a beachside cafe, drinking an overpriced latte and browsing job listings when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Joseph Bryant, Quantum Shift's CTO. "Dana," he said, sounding overly cheerful. "How have you been?" "Fine, Joseph," I answered, keeping my voice steady. "What can I help you with?" "Well, the team is working on the next release, and they had a few questions about some of your architecture choices. I was hoping you might have time for a quick consultation." I took a slow sip of my coffee. Consultation. Interesting wording. "I'm not sure that would be appropriate considering how I left," I said carefully. Joseph cleared his throat. "Look, Dinah, we're willing to compensate you for your time. Logan may have been a bit hasty in his decision." "Hasty," I echoed. "Is that what we're calling it now?" He didn't respond right away. "The documentation is a bit specialized." I almost laughed. Specialized was a gentle way of saying that my shorthand made no sense to anyone else. I had documented everything, but in a way that was tailored to my brain, not theirs. "I'm afraid I'm pretty busy right now," I said. "Maybe Troy, with all his extensive experience, can figure it out." "Dana," Joseph started, but I cut him off. "I honestly wish you all the best, Joseph. Truly." I ended the call. A moment later, my phone buzzed with a text from him. "We can double your consultation rate. Please reconsider." That was the last message I saw before I set my phone down. I wasn't going to reply. Let them sit with it for a while. Later that evening, while I was making dinner, an email popped up from Ethan Wilson, one of the junior engineers I had mentored. The subject line said, "You won't believe this." Ethan had always been thankful for the time I spent guiding him when nobody else bothered. His email was short. "Dana, everything's falling apart here. Troy can't figure out your authentication system. 3 clients have reported major problems after the latest deployment. Logan is blaming the engineering team, but everyone knows it's because they can't understand your architecture. Joseph is in full panic mode. Just thought you should know. Miss having you here. Ethan." I sat at my kitchen counter, reading it twice. I hadn't expected things to collapse this fast. A part of me felt worried for my old team. Many of them were good people just trying to do their jobs. But another part of me, the part that remembered Logan's smug comment during my firing, felt the first small wave of satisfaction. My phone rang again. This time it was Valerie. "I just got a call from Quantum Shift's legal department," she said. "They want to discuss a consulting arrangement already." I was honestly surprised at how quickly things were escalating. "Apparently, they're having some technical difficulties," Valerie added in a tone that was much too calm to be accidental. "What do you think we should do?" I asked. "I think we let them sweat a little longer," she said. "The more desperate they become, the stronger your negotiating position will be." When I hung up, something shifted inside me. For the first time since leaving, I realized I held all the power now. It wasn't about punishing them. It was about finally getting the recognition I had earned. By the 4th week after my dismissal, the messages picked up. Joseph called, then Troy, then Ethan again with quiet updates and soft pleas for help. I kept my distance, answering only when I felt like it, and even then, giving nothing away. While they scrambled to fix their problems, I stayed busy. I'd set up meetings with 3 competing firms, not because I wanted a job, but to understand the broader market and assess my leverage. I needed a clear picture of where I stood. On a bright Tuesday morning, exactly 1 month after I cleared out my desk, my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Logan. "Dana," he began, trying hard to sound confident. "I think we got off on the wrong foot. The board and I have been reviewing your departure, and we believe there might have been a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I repeated, keeping my voice steady. "About what exactly?" "About your value to the company," Logan said, pushing the words out like they hurt. "We'd like to bring you back as a consultant to help with the transition." I almost said, "What happened to nobody remembering my contributions?" But I kept that one in my pocket. No need to show any cards. "I'm not interested in consulting," I said calmly, "but I appreciate the offer." "Dana, be reasonable," he protested. "We're talking about a significant consulting fee. 6 figures for a few weeks of work." "I'm actually quite busy right now," I replied, using the same line I'd given Joseph. "Best of luck." I hung up before he could respond and immediately called Valerie. "Logan just offered me a consulting role," I told her. 6 figures. "They're getting desperate," Valerie said. "But we have to move smart. Have you been watching their product performance?" I had. Quantum Shift's client-facing dashboard had suffered major downtime. Their Twitter support account was drowning in complaints. Their stock price, which had jumped after the funding announcement, had fallen 15% in just the past week. "It's not looking good for them," I said. "Perfect," Valerie replied. "I've been digging into a few things myself. Did you know Logan presented your authentication system to the investors as if he built it?" A cold jolt ran through me. "What?" "I've got a contact on their board," Valerie explained. "Word is, Logan has been taking credit for your work for years. The investors thought they were backing his technical vision, not realizing the core system was entirely your creation." The news shouldn't have stunned me, but it did. Firing me was one thing, but stealing ownership of my work? That was a line I never imagined he'd cross. "What's our next move?" I asked, my voice turning sharp. "We wait 1 more week," Valerie said. "Let things continue to worsen on their end. Then we send them a formal notice, asserting your retained intellectual property rights." "Can we actually do that?" I signed their employment contract. "The contract covers work completed as part of your job," she explained. "But your custom authentication system, the one that sets their whole product apart, started as a prototype you built on your own time before you ever joined Quantum Shift." She paused, letting that sink in. "In other words," Valerie added, "you have more leverage than they ever expected." "You have the dated GitHub repository to prove it," Valerie continued. "You brought that work with you, adapted it for Quantum Shift, but the underlying IP can reasonably be argued as yours." I remembered those early days clearly, coding in my tiny apartment on weekends, building the authentication system as a personal side project long before Logan ever approached me about joining Quantum Shift. I had even mentioned this to him when I was hired, but he brushed it off like it didn't matter. Now, that dismissal was about to cost him dearly. "So we have leverage," I said slowly, as the realization settled in. "More than leverage," Valerie replied. "We have a legitimate legal claim that could shut down their entire operation if we decide to push it." I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of that sink in. When I left Quantum Shift, I felt powerless, like they'd taken everything. But now, the situation had flipped so hard that I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. 5 weeks after my departure, Quantum Shift hit a breaking point. Their stock had dropped another 20%, and talk of major clients walking away was spreading through industry forums. My phone had finally gone silent, and somehow, That silence felt worse than their earlier frantic calls. I was at home watching a documentary when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and froze. Standing on my porch was Olivia Harris, the lead investor from Threshold Ventures. "Ms. Whitaker," she said, her tone serious. "I apologize for coming without notice, but this couldn't wait. May I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. Olivia had always been polite during investor meetings, but we'd never spoken privately. "I'll get straight to the point," she said, as she sat on my couch. "Quantum Shift is in trouble, and I believe you know the reason." "I've heard there are some technical challenges," I answered carefully. Olivia's stare was sharp and direct. "The authentication system is failing, and no one on the team can repair it. Logan assured us the company had redundancies in place for key roles, but that was clearly false." I stayed quiet and let her continue. "What concerns us more," she said, "is that we've uncovered inconsistencies in how the technical leadership was portrayed. Logan told us he was the system's visionary, and you were simply implementing his design." A bitter laugh slipped out before I could stop it. "Is that what he told you?" "It is," she said. "But after reviewing everything with our technical advisors, it's obvious you were the real architect. Logan misrepresented your role to secure funding." I took a slow breath. "I'm not surprised, but I am disappointed." "As am I," Olivia said. "Threshold invested $10 million based partly on information that wasn't accurate. That's why I'm here, Ms. Whitaker. The board has scheduled an emergency meeting for tomorrow. Logan doesn't know about my visit, but I believe your presence is essential." This wasn't what I expected. I had assumed our next steps would be legal battles, not a direct invitation to confront the board. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" I said. "I'm asking you to tell the truth," Olivia replied. "Help us understand the situation. Help us determine our options. And I can promise you this: your work will finally be recognized and valued." I thought about it carefully. "I appreciate the offer, Ms. Harris, but my attorney advised me not to communicate directly with Quantum Shift without legal protections." Olivia nodded, looking unsurprised. "Then let's bring your attorney into the meeting as well. This isn't a backroom deal. It's about transparency. The investors need clarity." I considered her words. Showing up at the board meeting might be risky, but it also gave me direct access to the people who actually had power. "I'll need to speak with my attorney first," I said. "Of course." Olivia stood. "The meeting is at 10 a.m. tomorrow. I hope you'll be there." Once she left, I immediately called Valerie and walked her through the situation. "This is an interesting turn," Valerie said. "Earlier than I expected, but potentially very useful. If you attend, you'll be entering that room from a position of strength, not desperation." "What about the formal notification we planned?" "We can still send it," she said. "Actually, I recommend we send it tonight. That way they'll walk into the meeting already aware of your legal standing." I agreed, and Valerie promised she would send the notice immediately. That night, sleep barely came. Tomorrow would be a confrontation I never sought, but one I was finally ready for. I wasn't going in to settle scores. I was going in to set the record straight. Logan had tried to erase me from the story of Quantum Shift. Tomorrow, I would write myself back in, permanently. The Quantum Shift offices looked exactly the same as they had when I left 6 weeks earlier, but the atmosphere was completely different. I walked through reception beside Valerie, feeling dozens of eyes follow us. Soft whispers trailed behind as we made our way toward the main conference room. When we stepped inside, the tension hit immediately. Around the long table sat the board members, including Olivia Harris, along with 3 other investors and the company's entire executive team. Logan sat at the head of the table, but the confidence he always carried was gone. His smile had vanished. The room went quiet as I took my seat. Joseph, the CTO, looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Ms. Whitaker, thank you for being here," Olivia said, standing to greet me. And this must be your attorney, Ms. Knowles. That's right, Valerie replied with complete calm, placing her briefcase on the table. We received your invitation and came in good faith. However, I should mention that we sent a formal notification last night to Quantum Shift's legal team regarding retained intellectual property rights. Logan's face went red. This is ridiculous. You signed an employment contract clearly stating that all work product belongs to the company. I know exactly what I signed, I answered, keeping my voice steady. But the authentication system you're referring to was created before I ever joined the company. I have proof, including the original GitHub repository with time-stamped commits. One of the investors, a silver-haired man I recognized as Victor Lee from Magnitude Capital, leaned in. Is this accurate, Logan? Were you aware of this? Logan's jaw clenched. Dana is twisting the truth. She might have had some early code, but anything substantial was made during her time here. I took my laptop from my bag and connected it to the display. With your permission, I'd like to show some evidence. Olivia nodded, and I opened the GitHub repository. The commit history clearly showed dates well before my employment at Quantum Shift. Then I pulled up early emails between Logan and me, where I specifically told him I'd be incorporating my pre-existing authentication system into the project. As you can see, Valerie added, Mr. Merritt acknowledged Dana's prior work in those emails, but never executed any formal transfer of these intellectual property rights. The standard employment agreement doesn't cover pre-existing work. The room fell silent as the board members looked at one another. Logan shifted uneasily in his chair. There's something else, I said, opening another set of files, slides from the investor presentations. These are the materials you were shown during the Series A round. The authentication system, which I created, is listed as a core competitive advantage, yet my name is missing entirely. Victor Lee removed his glasses and rubbed his forehead. Logan, you positioned yourself as the architect of these systems. I supervised their development, Logan argued. Supervision isn't creation, I said, and your supervision mostly consisted of unrealistic deadlines and taking credit for work you didn't do. Joseph, who had remained quiet up to this point, finally spoke. I can confirm that Dana was the main architect of the authentication system. Without her, we haven't been able to maintain it, as the last 6 weeks clearly show. Logan shot him a furious look, but the damage was done. The investor's doubt was now plain. What exactly are you asking for, Ms. Whitaker? Another board member asked. Valerie responded before I could. My client doesn't want to destroy Quantum Shift. She believes in the product she helped create, but she expects accurate recognition of her work, fair compensation for her intellectual property, and written assurances that her contributions won't be misrepresented again. And if we refuse, Logan snapped. Then the notification stands, Valerie said coolly. Quantum Shift will be legally barred from using the authentication system, which means your product will stop functioning. The weight of her words settled over the room. Quantum Shift's $10 million valuation, their entire business model, depended on the system I had built. The engineer Logan tried to erase was now the only person who could save them. The emergency meeting went on for another 3 hours. As the discussion continued, Logan's position eroded with every piece of evidence presented. The board members, who at first had been cautious, grew more convinced the longer they listened. Eventually, Victor Lee called for a brief recess. The board stepped out for private deliberation. When they returned, Olivia Harris spoke with firm authority. After careful review, the board has reached several decisions, she said. First, we will be initiating immediate changes in leadership. Logan, we acknowledge your role in founding Quantum Shift, but the level of misrepresentation under your direction is unacceptable. Logan's face drained of color. You can't be serious. I built this company from nothing, Logan snapped. With Dana's technology, Victor Lee added sharply, a fact you deliberately hid from the board. Olivia continued. Second, we're offering Dana a new role as Chief Technology Officer, with the appropriate equity and full recognition of her past contributions. My pulse quickened. This was far more than I ever expected. Additionally, she said, we're proposing a licensing agreement for the authentication system, including royalties on all future revenue tied to its use. Valerie and I exchanged a look. This was almost everything we had hoped to secure. And finally, Olivia said, there will be a public correction acknowledging Dana as the principal architect of Quantum Shift's core technology. Logan shot to his feet. This is a huge mistake. You're giving control of the company to someone who's holding us hostage. No, Logan, I said quietly. I'm not holding anyone hostage. I'm making sure the truth is finally acknowledged. Victor Lee nodded firmly. The board's decision is final. You can either take a reduced role as a strategic advisor or step away completely. The choice is yours. Logan scanned the room for support, but every face remained stone still. Without saying another word, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. As the room settled into silence, I realized the feeling inside me wasn't revenge. It was justice, pure and simple. 3 months later, I stood on a small stage at Quantum Shift's headquarters, speaking to our team and a group of tech journalists. The company looked completely different. Today marks an important milestone, I said. With this new platform update, we're not just improving performance, we're rebuilding on a foundation of transparency and true collaboration. The authentication system that once lived only inside my personal GitHub now had an entire team supporting it. Every engineer received clear credit for what they contributed. The documentation was organized and easy to access, ensuring no single person would ever hold all the knowledge again. After the event, Olivia walked over with a warm smile. The investors are thrilled with the turnaround, she said. User complaints are down 87%, and former clients are starting to return. It's been a team effort, I told her, genuinely proud of what we'd built. True, she agreed, but your leadership is what made it possible. Oh, have you heard about Logan? I shook my head. Since the meeting, he had declined the advisory role and walked away completely. He's trying to start another company, Olivia said, but he's struggling to get funding. Word travels fast in this industry. A brief flicker of sympathy passed through me. I hope he learns from all of this. So do I, Olivia said softly, though some lessons cost more than others. Later that afternoon, an unexpected email appeared in my inbox. It was from Logan, only a few lines long. Dana, I owe you an apology. I should have valued your contributions instead of trying to diminish them. The company is better in your hands. Logan. I sat quietly for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened. Then I typed my reply. Logan, thank you for the apology. If you want help rewriting the next part, just send it. I wish you success in your future endeavors. Sometimes the most valuable lessons are the most painful ones. Dana. It wasn't about forgiveness, and it certainly wasn't about forgetting. It was about acknowledgement of the truth, of my work, of the years I had spent building something only to watch someone else try to take credit for it. I had fought for that recognition, piece by piece, step by step, and finally I had achieved it.